Paul, thank you so much. And let me just thank Ecole de Guerre and the organizers and hosts who have been incredibly gracious by even allowing me to join this august group of thinking doers. I owe my colleague, Dr. Kogan, Eugene, a great special thanks because you did for me what 30 plus years in the military was not able to do to me. You promoted me to general today, so I'll try to live up to it. And it's, again, I just want to say, at the risk of embarrassment, I just want to say how great it is to virtually sit next to Admiral retired Bill McRaven. Sir, always great to see you, and hope I don't let you down with my playing the role of a futurist today. Last panelist speaking at the last panel of a conference. That's pretty daunting. And again, anyone who knows me, I am cursed with the gift of gab or mouthiness, itis. So I'm going to try to go to a bit of a script. I'll apologize. I'm going to bring up a couple of pictures also, just kind of squeeze an extra 1,000 or 10,000 words into a few moments. But what I mainly want to do today is I want to take on the mission I've been given to play the futurist. Peter Singer's a real futurist. Peter, my apologies. I'm going to try to play one. You give me a grade at the end of the day. But I want to paint a picture. And I think it's important to paint a landscape. And I think our panelists throughout the day have done a beautiful job. In some literal sense, our first panelist starting out with art as imitation of life, or vice versa, life as an imitation of art. And I want to paint a picture forward of at least the broadest strokes, because we don't have a whole lot of time, but at least to provoke some ideas of the landscape and bring us back to what we in the special operations community call soft truth number one, right? The human comes first, human over hardware, not magically and massively divorced from hardware, but human first in those human technological relationships. I'll come back to that in the end, but I want to paint a picture. I'm going to also, like Eugene has done in Admiral McRaven, put 3 insights on the table. And since I'm going to play the futurist today, we'll call those insights foresights, and you be the judge. Couple more things on preamble, and I'll get right into insight 1, and I'll pull up a couple of pictures just to paint it forward a bit. First and foremost, in terms of a preamble, I want to frame tomorrow's Universal Soldier, and that's the title I've been given. Please, everyone, every time I say Universal Soldier, have the suspicion and the scare and skeptical quotes in mind, and I'll probably do this from time to time to keep us in that spirit. But I want to frame it around the prototype of today's and frankly the last 100 years of the special operator. I'm going to do that for 3 reasons. The first reason is because in the broadest, most meta description and definition of the special operator, the special leader operator, the special forces professional, it means different than the regular and the conventional. Exquisitely so in terms of tradecraft and toolcraft, but it means different. And I would offer my second point, because what has been different and special in terms of the universal soldiers of the past and the present, I would offer in terms of this forecasted future forward, must be and become the new conventional. And so as we think about and understand and got a better understanding of our special operators, joint cross services within a nation state, and combined multinational allies and partners, what we understand is special today will become the new conventional. So I'm going to use universal soldier and soldiering mixed match with my specific talk of special forces and special operations and special forces leader operator. Lastly, my every waking and sleeping moment as the president of SOFS University, the Joint Special Operations University, as you would figure, has been and must be all about this future, all about the current leader operator, all about the next generation, what we're calling here in US SOCOM, the 4th age of the special operations professional. All my waking and unwaking moments are about thinking forward and retooling our teaching and learning, research analysis, and service outreach, everything we do to begin to plant those seeds now to germinate and grow for harvest going out for the next 50 plus years. And so that's the preambles. Let me get to insight number one. Insight number one, a changed and changing landscape must be appreciated first and foremost, and it's essential for getting the future portrait and profile of this universal soldier, getting it accurate. And let me fumble here for 1 second and see if I can pull up a slide, just to give you a picture. Okay. First and foremost, the Universal Soldier, Special Operations Force of the future, like the nations that they will serve and have served, are all at a threshold crossing of a next era, a new, what we call in U.S. Special Forces Command, Special Operations Command, a fourth age. In fact, we may have been through and well beyond this crossing for many years now, frankly. This new fourth age or next generation is one of compound security threats. You've heard many of those put forward today. A polycentristic reality of security and defense that transcends the traditional understandings of what constitutes the jurisdictional boundaries of security and defense, military, non-military, et cetera, et cetera. The future soldier, the universal soldier of the future, will not necessarily be a universal warrior diplomat, a warrior developer, and a warrior defender and guardian when we bring in the space realm. Able to be and do polycentric things, right? To deal in a polycentric world. This new fourth age is one of compound security threats and a character of global geopolitical competition that is governed by a new and transformative compound security dilemma. I don't have a whole lot of time to go into that in the deep description, but if you go to the JSOW YouTube program, we have a theory of next. Frankly, I've been working on it. It's been body of my research for about 30 years now. Brought it into Special Operations Command, intentionally so, because Special Operations, vanguards of the vanguard force for the United States in the coalitions in the Western liberal world order that at times chooses to follow our lead. So being able to bring a theory of next like this to the table will give us the platform for understanding and appreciating, anticipating that landscape as it is changing and how it's changing. Multiplicative, it's not A plus B equals C, it's A times B times C equals something to the exponent. That's what our future leaders are gonna have to understand and embrace and become polycentric in all that they do. But those, there are two videos there. They're very short on the YouTube channel. It gives everyone easy to access and gives you some nice B-roll that kind of describes that for you. I'll encourage you to look at it. And I've sent the organizers of the conference links to those as well. Please share those freely and broadly. Now, this compound security character of the global security environment is such that it demands a future utility of that universal soldier, that SOF, that special operator, that is equally compounded. That is to say, a comprehensive combination of all the skills, techniques, and operational methods of all three preceding ages, if you will, amplified by 21st century technological advancements. Nothing less than this comprehensive joint combined utility of universal soldiering from philosophy of culture, identity, and approach is required for overmatching power in and under these fourth age conditions. Nothing less than a trans everything view of an approach to universal soldiering. Now, growing, fostering, preserving, and sharpening the edge of the fourth age soft universal soldier for all of our nations, not themselves. Again, quiet professionalism, humility to the purpose, not the military instrument of the thing. And never, I'll quote Clausewitz, I have to, everyone has done so far, that supreme judgment, never breaking the supreme judgment that Clausewitz gives us of divorcing the political object from the military object or any object of instrumentation. For when you do so, you create something pointless and devoid of all sense. If only Clausewitz were completely right in that regard, pointlessness and divorce of all sense would leave us standing pat, even Stephen. Unfortunately, oftentimes it creates something that's much more of a deleterious, grotesque outcome in terms of achievement of a relative peace as we can come to know it. There are 6 core principles of leader development that we are planting the seeds on now that will manifest in the next 2 to 3 generations that will develop that universal soldier that we're talking about. Let me just script through them really quick. First, future universal soldiers, those future special operators, leader operators, will have to understand the security environment in the contributions of all instruments of power. Secondly, they'll have to anticipate and respond to surprise and uncertainty. Thirdly, they'll have to anticipate, recognize change, and lead those changes through transitions. Fourth, they must be able to operate on intent through trust, empowerment, and understanding. Fifthly, they have to be able to make and act on ethical decisions based on shared values of the professions, not just of arms, but of all instruments of power. And sixthly, they must be able to think creatively, critically, and strategically in applying Joint Special Operations Forces warfighting principles, those universal warrior, diplomat, development, and defender and guardian principles and concepts in the whole of government, whole of nations, GMC, joint interagency, intergovernmental, multinational. All those buzzwords must become real and embedded in the DNA of the future universal soldier. Let's see if I can get one more. Okay, good. Now, the new realities of today and tomorrow's compound security dilemma governed global security environment will demand nothing less than this universal soldier. That while retaining some of the core essence of the traditional soldier and soldiering that we've come to know and have been and are enduring, they must vitally be able to transcend at the same time those traditions, break those continuation and continuity biases embedded within those notions of what constitutes a soldier and the other than or non-soldier, and to become that, again, that universal warrior in a very polycentric way, capable of producing the sorts of compound applications of what I'll call integrative statecraft that are necessary to overmatch the perils of compound security threats, some of which you see intimated on the slide in front of you, and more importantly, to effectively shape a better relative peace for all as we can come to know it, as Clausewitz said. Foresight number 2. History is illustrative. It can also illuminate, but it does not repeat, however we do. And especially when we do not recognize and heed its lessons for our futures. A back to the future point of view and approach is essential to understanding and creating and fostering this universal soldier. Now, despite the narrow focus on counterterrorism and counterinsurgency over the past 20 years that we've all faced, all of our nationhoods have faced, US-led combined joint special operations forces have offered policymakers across our coalitions certainly what proved the sine qua non of America's and our coalition's fighting edge during the decades of counterterrorism and counterinsurgency, those last 20 years. Pinpoint focused on direct action rating, but not solely on direct action rating. SOF expands the range of military operations, both in quality and capability, and operational and strategic utility of employment, to enable other instruments of statecraft to succeed. That special operations unique contribution is going to be conventional, necessarily conventional in the future universal soldier. Again, remember those scare quotes. Throughout the Cold War, again, a back to the future perspective real briefly, this soft full range of operational capacity offered nations like ours the ability to win without fighting, not to have to resort to armed conflict while always being prepared to do so. The way and means of filling George Kennan's prescription of an active containment-based national and grand strategy. Special operations forces have always done this, not just in the lower ends of a range or continuum or spectrum of peace and warfare, but continuously throughout. But importantly, at those spaces in between, those transition points between cooperation and competition, between competition and the threshold of armed conflict, keeping things below the threshold of classic armed conflict as much as and as long as possible, but always being prepared to be unbeatable and overmatching if and when wars come. In this new fourth age, geography has returned with a vengeance as a governing dynamic of international relations, and positional advantage is once again a determinant factor of this new compound security world order and disorder. I think I have another piece to show you here for that. Now, why is that so? Because geostrategy is an essential element of the disruptors playbooks that we face today. We'll pinpoint China and Russia in that regard, but not solely China and Russia. And more pointedly to China's expansion globally as they seek to couple targeted control and access to key geostrategic locations to outmaneuver and hold at risk all of our nations, the Western liberal international community of democracy specifically, all of our nation's interests, regionally and globally, holding them at risk. Adversaries and competitors are now pursuing positional advantage through their strategies of action globally. These notions of old mercantilism, now I'd call it neo-mercantilism of the 21st century. That will be the world disorder going forward. Beggar thy neighbor, increased transactional approaches to applications of force for some suspicious power purposes. And a disruption of the standing international order that is stood in order, relatively speaking, since 1945, in some elements of its progeny or its ancestry going all the way back to the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648. All that being under what I might call a globalizing insurgency against the principles and norms, the rules and decision-making procedures of that Western liberal, small west, small l, international relative order. Competitors and adversaries like China are looking to futures harkening back to past and to past geostrategic thinkers and strategists like Mackinder, Alfred Thayer Mahan, and others, and contemporizing their strategies as spheres of influence by way of trans-regional and global spanning updates and applications of concepts like heartland, rimland. Tomorrow's victories and losses will play out at what George Kennan called the strong points. Now, those strong points are certainly going to be those same historical geographic places, but they're going to be those nexes where geography and geostrategy comes into collision with human security at those root cause levels, those underlying current levels, as an old boss of mine coined the phrase of, in the ideational realm, right? Tomorrow's universal soldier, like today's and the past special operator, must become native to these nexes locations and these nexes, these spaces in between. SOF has always lived in such places and spaces. Foresight 3, and I'm close to concluding here. The portrait of the future universal soldier must be beyond war and be capable of thinking beyond war and foresighting the peace as we can come to know it. Now, United States Special Operations Community now speaks towards what you've probably heard and read about, the hyper-enabled operator, or the HEO concept. That individual who's intended to be a soft professional empowered by technologies that accelerate tactical decision-making by increasing situational awareness and reducing cognitive workload. No single technology certainly will independently make operators hyper-enabled. However, instead, leader operators will become hyper-enabled through the integration of technologies. Now, I would say the future universal soldier will need to certainly be future professionals of integrative statecraft and technologists in this regard. The future generations will be digital natives. But more importantly than being an expert in the ones and zeros, even when the future operators are digital natives, in being savvy in that regard to the current fourth technological revolution, more importantly, I would offer is that universal soldier of the future has to be savvy to the usefulness and utility of emergent technology. Hyper-enablement will be vital to tomorrow's universal soldier, but even more vital will be ensuring that the future HEO professional will be at least equally highly educated and responsible. And what we're doing deep dive studies on this so that we can ensure that as we hyper-enable the future leader operator, that we're also they're making that future operator, that universal soldier, highly educated, hyper-enabled, responsible operator. And that's HERO. So the universal soldier of the future will be the hero of the future. Let me just conclude with bringing us back to the human dimension. As it has been in the past, it will be in the future going forward. And I want to bring us back to the human dimension. The fidelity or trust bond of the professional, the universal soldier of the future, that universal warrior, diplomat, defender, guardian, and developer, the fidelity or trust bond of those individuals to their national publics and to their nation's vital interests, including commitments to their allies and partners, has always found its strongest roots in the rich soils of those nationhoods' histories, and for our sake, American history. Examples set by leaders from America's General George Washington, frankly, Admiral Bill McRaven, reinforced the principle of subordination of the practitioner, and particularly the military practitioner, to civilian authority, to the peace objective, and through that authority to the security and defense of their nationhoods. Today's and tomorrow's compound security dilemmas demand a restriking of that critical balance of fidelity with the general wills of the societies that we hail from, serve, and repatriate back to after we leave the uniform. Between special operations forces, exquisitely specialized warfighting acumen, and the nations that they serve, their core values. As it was and has always been, so it shall continue to be. And with that, thank you again, probably for the extra time I stole. And I look forward to questions, commentary, and future continuing relationships. Thank you very much.